I walk down my hallowed road, hearing nothing but birds in the wind. Cigarettes stain the walls, and I realized I was in a ghost town. This is a song for all the chairs in the world, plastic, wooden, and whatever else. This is a song for all the things that we can understand. Take my hand, I know you can't. I'll take your leg and then we'll dream of a far off place where no one cares that you're a chair. And it's okay to be ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. This is a song for old Maxine, maybe floating down the Nile now. Crocodile, you ain't real, but my dreams of you, they made me feel. You were mine, perhaps no more, can't say for sure, but now I've learned what loss can do. Think you're through, but I dream of you, my patient crocodile. Ba-ba, ba-ba, ba-ba-ba. This is a song for the chair I'm in now, looking at the world through my computer's mind. How can we live in the now when each thing we do takes up more time? So take the song and use it well when hope is gone and you can tell you're aging fast while time is slow. At least you know your mind is one of love. And as you leave that ghost town, you shift out of the love of old into those nostalgic echoes. I usually only play a snippet of songs at the beginning of the show, but that was a song I wrote a long time ago. I guess we're at about 9 years now since I wrote that song, and I just liked the way it sounded when I played it again the other day. But even though it's one of my songs, I'm playing it at the beginning of one of my interview episodes, and that's because for the first time today, my guest is not a musician. So, firstly, I have this person on my show because he's an amazing character who's been an important part of my life for just over a decade now. But also, more broadly, I want to speak to different kinds of artists. I want to talk to people about living their dreams, what it means for ordinary people to try and pursue their arts, whatever it is. And this is a person who helped me discover my love of film. This is a person who encourages me and pushes me to try and be more of a reader. I promise I'm working that. I'm not a non-reader, but he's really into it. He writes for literary magazines. His name is Sean Dowie. I think this interview is going to be a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy it. So, Sean, you're my first non-musical guest on this show. And the reason for that is that I'm more broadly interested in the artist's journey. And the segment of your life I've known you for, it's actually been a pretty cool artistic journey. It starts out in a quirky way. We're in an 11th grade playwriting class, and you write a bit of an unusual script. You want to take us back to that beginning?
Yeah, so I it was in grade 11. I never really wrote anything in my life. I got into a playwriting class not because I wanted to, but because of scheduling conflict. And my this is like the dumbest thing ever. But my teacher said, look at the places around you, look at like the class around you, and see if anything sparks your interest. And I saw a chair, and I was like, okay, well, I'll write a play about a talking chair. And it was a musical and it was about the human condition and also the chair condition and how like those two things mesh. It was a weird thing. Um, didn't get super warmly received by my teacher, but it definitely was an enjoyable time writing it, and it made me realize that creativity is the most important asset to my life. So yeah, that's it.
Right. Do you have any philosophical insights into what the chair condition is or the human condition?
Yeah, so the chair condition is basically the human condition. In my world, chairs feel the same way we do. It's just that they have certain disadvantages that also come with it. Like there's people sit on them, so they kind of feel enslaved and downtrodden. So it's a mix of like real life relatable emotions with the added burden of being sat on.
I remember more details. I guess it's kind of hard to explain to the broad internet. You gave a speech introducing this play, which antagonized our teacher more. So you were someone who weren't necessarily great at pleasing teachers back in the day, and yet at this point or only slightly later, you start to develop these very academic hobbies. So you became someone who didn't just watch the blockbuster movies. You're someone who encyclopedically knows every important film that comes out each year. You have lots of opinions on great directors. So how did that development come to be?
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all. It came to be because I had really, I had nothing to do in my life, and I decided to get a hobby. And I was like, okay, let's try out film. I liked writing about chairs well enough, so writing seems cool. And then I have a pretty obsessive personality, so it kind of like I channeled all my obsession into that, and I really wanted to be good at something because at the time I had like no talents besides growing an afro, and
And memorizing the
yeah.
dictionary.
Oh yeah, that's true. I did memorize the dictionary. That another obsessive thing. So yeah, I just watched stuff, and before it was just to say I knew everything about film, and then the more I watched, the more I actually genuinely fell in love with it. So yeah.
Right. Was there a particular movie or moment or something that made you feel like, okay, I've made it as a film fan? And do you have any suggestions for other people who maybe want to make that jump into being good at watching movies?
Yeah, so for me, the two films that I saw in grade 11 were that really sparked my interest were Mulholland Drive, which is the David Lynch film, and Being John Malkovich, which is a Charlie Kaufman and Spike Jonze film. I don't expect the audience to know who those people are, but they're cool directors and writers, so they should check them out. And um, what interested me is that they really pushed the boundaries of creativity because creativity is like my favorite thing in the world. Writing cool sentences is awesome and great dialogue and great characters, but expanding the bounds of what your mind is believed to be is super impressive. And as for advice, I would say think about your interest in your real life. Like what in general conversation do you like, and then if it's like talking about boys or girls, then I would recommend, and you like go really philosophical about your relationships, and I would recommend some artsy romances. If you're all about non-stop adrenaline rush, then action movies are probably good for you. I would recommend, I don't know, like The Raid. So yeah, it's just like think about your real life interests, and usually that translates to your film interest.
Right. I think one thing that might hold some people back from movies like Being John Malkovich and more so Mulholland Drive is they don't make it easy to figure out exactly what they're about. So if someone goes to see one of those movies, particularly Mulholland Drive, and they're frustrated with it, how would you encourage them to keep going?
Well, I think either so there's two options. You could start with like the less artsy films and work your way up, because I think learning about films is an acquired trait. The more you watch, the better you understand them. Another way to do it is if you want to like just jump into the deep end, you could watch the films and then watch analyses about them, because the best thing for me in understanding films at the beginning was watching people who were smarter than me analyze films that I really liked, but I didn't fully understand. So there's like tons of articles online, there's YouTube videos, So yeah, just go for it.
Right. I guess, and then a thing I'd throw in, an epiphany I had is, to focus on what you like in things and maybe not trying to like the thing as a whole. So the first time I saw The Godfather, I really didn't get the big deal because I didn't get all the little mafia infights, why every single execution happened. And I assumed that meant I didn't get the movie. And then I tried it again and I realized, okay, well, I really like the development of Michael Corleone as a character. And, so what if I don't understand every little detail? Presumably, this is what people like about the movie. And so you can fixate on parts like that.
For sure. And like I was I don't want to move into literature yet, but I was at a Augur poetry training, and they don't expect us to like understand everything about the poems that we read. It's more about the feelings they evoke and how we can change the style to better channel that feeling. So I feel like as long as you glom onto something, whether it be a theme or a passage or like cheeky line breaks, or to move it to film, whether it be like cool dialogue that you sometimes understand or nice images, I think there's something, and I don't think like people expect. There are some like elite people who expect you to understand everything about art house films, and I think that's an impossibility. Um, the most important thing is whether it makes you feel something. You don't have to have like the talent or whatever to form it into words, but as long as you feel it in your gut, I think that is worth watching an art house film for.
Right. So the next step in your journey, you submitted a portfolio and got accepted to this small program at York University for screenwriters. So what's it like to make the jump from this being your serious hobby to something you're actually studying academically?
Yeah, so that was interesting because at least at the time, I was like in a very anti-academic mood. I felt like people were like when we watched The Matrix and had to write a 3,000 word essay on it. I didn't see the need to write at what I once saw no longer as like a vapid action movie into a 3,000 word academic essay. But it became really interesting because it helped me look at films in a deeper way, whether it be just like looking at the themes or looking at the history behind it. Because as I've learned at probably the biggest thing I've learned at school is that context is important, and it's good to see who the director is, who the writer is, what the time was, what like the dominating principles were in that era, and I that so yeah, it taught me that context is important, and it also taught me that reading academic articles might seem tiring and dull at first, but if you keep reading, then there's like stuff to glom onto that will help you learn films even better.
Okay, so specifically with the Matrix, if you can say it quickly for people who don't take it seriously, what's the pitch?
It's been so long, but it's like probably okay. So what I'd probably say is that um, it puts like it slashes through reality, and it makes you feel like you're whether if you feel like tethered into this world, it opens up your mind and makes you think that there's more beyond it, and that even if your life is super dull, there's probably some grand power or grand science that's surrounding it that transcends what the dullness that you're aching with is. That's not a good description, but that's the best I got right now.
Right. Well, it's funny because it reminded me of the classic children's book, The Phantom Tollbooth, which
Yeah.
I think I still like better than The Matrix, but you piqued my curiosity.
I've never read The Phantom Tollbooth, even though I've heard of it so many times, and I feel like I should probably do it because this is like the fourth time this week that someone's mentioned it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, even though in some ways you've made all this progress, you continue to have experiences kind of like you had with your high school drama teacher with some of these screenwriting instructors, where your quirky storytelling, they're just convinced it's bad writing or inappropriate writing or whatever. What did you make of that? Did they have a point at all, or was it about the struggle of learning that professors aren't always right?
You know, at the time, I thought they were dead wrong, and I thought I was like at the top of the world, and people didn't understand my brilliance. But I like intentionally went out of the way of being as I like zigged when I was supposed to zag every opportunity, and I like spat in the face of plot structure. And looking back, I think there is some good in plot structure. I don't think you have to follow it to the letter. Like a lot of the professors I had treated writing as a formula, like Act Two has to happen at page 30 or whatever. I don't think that's the case, but I do think you should look at what works in stories, and often those stories that work have a good structure and learn from them, and kind of like combine your creativity and your wild imagination with the I don't want to say the rigor, but with the sort of bounds that have been established before that you really took to.
Right. Well, because I've had similar experiences. And so I'll have a teacher say this story is too weirdly written, it's hard to understand or whatever, and then you could jump in and say, well, look at David Lynch, he's hugely successful and his stories are weird and hard to understand. And then usually all the teacher says back is, well, you're not David Lynch. So how do you think David Lynch would think through a question like that, or someone like him?
I think David Lynch would call BS on it. I don't know why. Like, there's so many good art house directors that don't get their due. David Lynch is one of the lucky ones, and he totally deserves it. Don't get me wrong, but for some reason, there's like a certain amount. There's like a small amount of art house directors that get put on this pedestal, even though there are so many other people who match their talent. Um, but yeah, I think David Lynch would like scoff at them. Maybe not scoff because that's not really his style, but internally scoff and just keep making weird films and doing what he loves. I think that's the most important thing about art is that you should hear what people say about your art, but at the back to like the gut reaction, I feel like if it feels good in your gut, then you should totally run with it and keep making your weird shit. Yeah.
Right. So since graduating, you found a way to keep writing and storytelling in your life. In that professionally you're involved with publications called Augur, Faya, and Nerds of a Feather. So tell us a bit about getting involved with them, the different kinds of work you're doing there.
Yeah, so with Faya and Nerds of a Feather, I'm mainly writing book reviews. Faya focuses on speculative fiction from a Black perspective, and for those who don't know what speculative fiction is, it's like an umbrella term for fiction that doesn't follow reality to the letter. Like there's usually some fantastical or horrific or science fiction element. Nerds of a Feather is more general, but I still write about speculative fiction. It's just not specifically about Black people or people of color. And for Augur, I am an assistant editor, and I just really started like the editing part of that. We are working on our next issue, and we just accepted all the stories and poems, and I'm assisting in editing uh, with three of them, and it's a huge learning experience. I would say that for anyone who wants to be a writer, whether it be in film or in theater or in literature, that you should try to get an editing job because you get to really like look. It's like opening the hood of a car and really seeing what works and what doesn't in there. While if you're not editing, you're just like looking at from the outside and you don't really get a good look into its workings.
Right. So is this mostly like copy editing, or are you actually making substantial change suggestions to the writers?
It's well, there is substantive editing. It's not. I wouldn't like it, even though it's called substantive. It's not very substantial because the stories that we choose are ones that we absolutely adore, and we don't want to change very much as they are. But we do. It's more. It is more than copy editing. But like all the stories that we have are total bangers and amazing.
Right. Right. I guess so. You're saying you're looking under the hood. So what does that really mean? What are the surprises you're getting from this kind of editing?
Yeah, so it's like maybe looking at the minute um, ways to write, like whether it be sentence structure or punctuation or just like the order of the sentences, because sometimes the sentence comes too soon in the paragraph, and it would be like the first sentence in the paragraph would be better as the last sentence. Um, or sometimes um, one part is italicized, even though another part should be. Um, just like basic stuff. Well, I wouldn't call it basic, but just little stuff like that.
Right. I guess what you're saying is it feels little if you explain it, but if you're actually looking at it, it's huge.
Yeah, I am of the side that every word matters, whether it be a conjunction or a verb or whatever. And I like to think of like a story or a poem as, I can't remember the name of the game, but like, you take pieces from a little tower, and if you take the wrong piece, then it
Oh,
all
Jenga.
collapses. Yeah, thank you. It's kind of like that. Like you have to choose which pieces to take away and not have it all collapse.
All right. So I'd like to throw the same kind of question I did about film at you with literature. So how do you become a vociferous reader? Any texts you recommend? Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, so I did not love reading at all until probably age 17. Um, and then I like I this is embarrassing. I did like Harry Potter when I was a kid. Don't totally support J.K. Rowling now. Um, but besides that, I didn't love reading. And then I started looking into it because it seemed like something that all the smart people were doing. And just like with writing, at first I did it as like work, and then I slowly fell in love with it. Some um, authors that really gelled with me are Patrick Ness, who wrote the Chaos Walking trilogy, which unfortunately got turned into a shitty movie earlier this year. Don't recommend the movie with Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley, but the books are magnificent, or at least they were when I read them. They might have not have aged well. Challenger Deep by Neil Shusterman, which is probably the best look at mental illness I've seen. Um, and then like Atessa Moshfegh, who I know you've read. Uh, she wrote a book called My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and I thought, like, I don't often love misanthropic books, but when they're paired with humor, I feel like that really doesn't like overload it in depression and self hate and like hatred of the world, because it has like little peppers of sweetness. And um, who else? I like Stephen Graham Jones. He's a horror writer. He's probably like the best horror writer right now. He wrote a book that you read too, I know, called Mongrels, which is about vagabond werewolves. And that's like a ton of fun and really sparked my interest in how to write more zippily. Like every sentence is infused with energy, and I thought that was really cool.
Right. So I know you have a short story coming out, and it's certainly in the spirit of what you used to write, though also quite different. Would you say the writer who wrote the chair condition is still very much active, or you've moved on to something else?
I think the writer that wrote Chair Condition wrote weirdness just for weirdness sake. And now the writer of my story, Broken Bodies, coming out in June, is writing weirdness for a purpose. There's actually a theme in there. It's not just about chairs singing and trying to like just well, I already said it. Be weird for weirdness sake. There's a racial theme. There's a theme about fashion and the way we contort ourselves to fit a certain norm, sometimes quite literally in this story. And I feel like on like a sentence level, in terms of the actual writing, I feel like that is a lot more smooth. I used to be super wordy, and I'm proud of what I was able to do in like the 1,700 word story. I feel like it encompasses more in it than however many thousand words the chair condition was. So it's it's in some ways the same, but in many ways it's an evolved writer from 10 years ago.
Right. And will the public be able to find that story?
Yeah, so it'll be, I believe, available for free sometime in June. at Carousel Magazine. So look out for that. It's going to be great. I'm hoping to get more stuff published this year. I'm still waiting, but I don't know. Maybe
Excellent.
you'll
Well,
find out if you follow me somewhere.
yeah, so I know there's so many sides to, we didn't even get to your stand-up, which you've said you can't really do online without crowd reactions. You also wrote poems, and you're going to share a poem with us today.
Yeah, so this is a super short poem. I know I've been watching your interviews, which have been great. It's an honor to be on a Zach Morgenstern YouTube video. And they're several minutes. This is probably gonna only take like 45 seconds, but it's called A Child's Radiant Nightmare. He swallowed, engorged by a giant beast, screaming inside. Nobody hears him. Wooden body, leaden movement, almost lifeless, wanting the pain of flesh, doesn't yet feel human. Disconnection. A hallucinatory insect crawls on, under his skin, telling him what to do. Honeyed voice, sinister undertones. He's Pinocchio, the most beloved, delightful character. Uh, and that's my poem.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
And well, Sean, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, it was quite a joy. Thank you. I look forward to talking to you later.
Yes, in
Right.
non-interview format.
Yeah, non-interview format.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my interview with Sean Dowie today. So I realize I did not explain at the beginning of the show why I played that song. That was a song I wrote about my memories and my imagination, and around the time I was inspired to write that song, and I was inspired in part because my guitar was missing a string and my fingers just naturally plucked that bum 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 pattern as a result of missing the string. But the verse about hanging out with a chair was inspired by reading Sean Dowie's writing. So hopefully he gets to do more with his writing. Hopefully it won't just be me and his classmates who get to see it, but the broader world, because I really want this guy to make films that people see someday. He's just too much fun. His mind is too unique. And Sean, as you know, you're welcome back on this show anytime. Keep checking out these interviews. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is silent co-host Ludwig von B. See you next time.